Hi, everyone. Good morning. This is Greg Knight from the White Light Foundation. Today, I am joined by Raheem Buford, Jessica Lamb, and Jamil Span from the Nashville Bail Fund. The Nashville Bail Fund is empowering the Nashville community to dismantle a broken system. Their mission is to end wealth-based detention and free low-income individuals from jail. To this date, they have freed over 1,000 people from jail in the Nashville community. Welcome, Raheem, Jessica, and Jamil. So we want to give everyone here who's joining in an opportunity to learn more about the work that our friends here are doing on the ground. So I'd like to start out with a few questions. So Raheem, tell us a little bit more about the Nashville Bail Fund, and please feel free to share some personal stories of involvement, as well as some details about the organization's mission.
Sure. Well, first of all, I like to say that I'm Raheem Buford, and I am personally a directly impacted individual who, in his lifetime, has been arrested. And back in 1989, I could not afford bail. And as a result, in less than a year after I was appointed, two or three one was a public defender who got off of my case, and then two were indigent defense attorneys. I pled guilty to a charge in less than a year, and I went to prison for 26 years of my life. And so over the course of that time frame, I learned a lot about the criminal legal system, the criminal punishment system, the prison industrial complex. I learned about the language of this system in a way that few Americans may even understand, because it's from an inside out perspective. And in 2015, after 3 parole hearings, I was granted release. Before I even got out of prison, I had enrolled in the college classes. I had written a book. I had worked, and I had been trained to be an organizer. So I knew what I wanted to do. And I met a lady, her name is Reverend Janet Wolf, and she trained me into learning about what organizing was about on the grassroots side of things. And so around about the second year that I was out of prison, and I'm in need of completing a college class, I met Don Diener, who was at that time, the elected public defender. And I had expressed that I wanted to do work to help people who were in prison. And at some point, she connected me to the Bail Fund founders. And that was in 2018. And I began as an intern. Very quickly, I went from the participant coordinator to the Nashville Community Bail Fund manager in a very short span of time, like 4 months. And I began to create a process by which we would humanize Nashvillians who had been arrested and could not afford to pay bail. And I would learn through this experience that bail acts more like a ransom than the idea like bail is just some amount of money. I've learned that this amount of money that it costs for individuals to get out of jail is solely up to a magistrate to begin with. And we don't really understand that process and why that process exists in a way that it doesn't take into consideration that this person is only charged. It doesn't take into consideration that that person could be a parent, that person could lose his or her job, that person could experience trauma for the rest of his or her life. And so learning about this and this work with the Nashville Community Bail Fund, it just increased the flames of justice for me. And it keeps me connected to my own history in a way that when I am helping someone or fighting to help release someone, I understand exactly what that person is going through. And so I never see an inmate. I see a person charged with an offense. I'm always looking at a human being. And when I think about the criminal legal system, I understand that it has a public perception. And if you have not encountered or had contact with it, you may see it as law enforcement. But for the person who is poor, who grows up under certain socioeconomic conditions, just your encounters with the system is the police, and it's usually negative. I see a system that is quite the bully. And I see the bail fund as this David going up against Goliath. And this David is going into jails and extracting individuals who have not been convicted of crime. So I see our work as work that empowers just every average, everyday people to know that there are some human beings like the founders of the bail fund, Martin Brown, Joan Shane, who saw what was happening to mostly Black and brown people and said, this has to stop. And they created this bail fund. The idea 2016, incorporated 2017. I joined in 2018, and I'm on fire about this justice work.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for sharing. I think there's some really important points that you raised. And, you know, particularly that bail funds really reflect the racial disparities in the criminal justice system nationwide, right? We know that African Americans in particular are more likely than white Americans to be arrested. Once arrested, more likely to be convicted. Once convicted, more likely to experience lengthy prison sentences. So, Jessica, can you give us, I guess, a little bit more background, a little bit more understanding of why community bail funds are so important, especially for people of color?
Yeah, sure. I can speak a little bit on that. I think bail funds are important for many reasons. I think it all comes down to the way that the money bail system works and the reason why people, and disproportionately people of color, are in jail on bails they can't afford. And I think a lot of people who don't have experience with the system just think something like, people are in jail because they did something bad, and it's as simple as that. But when you understand that anyone who is in jail and has a bail set, they are free to go home as soon as they can fork up the money to pay. And so it really doesn't have anything to do. Well, first of all, they're all only accused of offenses, have not gone to trial yet. And the fact that they don't have the money to afford their freedom is the only thing keeping them in jail because they're eligible for release. And so I think bail funds are important because they highlight the brokenness of that system and how, money, the criminal legal system believes that money is required for people to return to court. They set bail for someone because they think that if someone has to pay, they're more likely to return. And every time the bail fund frees someone and that person goes back to court, in our case, it's over 95% of people we free, we show that that's a myth, that money is not required for people's freedom, and it doesn't dictate how they operate in the system, and that the money bail system is not something that's making the system better, but it's something that's putting people in cages only because they don't have a set dollar amount. And like every aspect of the criminal legal system, that disproportionately affects Black folks, other folks of color. And so that's why it's so important as we, as one organization that are part of a larger, nationwide group of people who are trying to change and reform the criminal legal system. This is our small piece of the pie, but it plays into all of that. And it's really the starting point for the process. As Raheem said, it's his personal experience. You get arrested and you can't afford bail. There is just a cascading list of consequences that can happen from there all the way into, incarceration for decades and all sorts of things. That's why I think bail funds are so important. And that's what I try to educate my community around is, the way the money bail system works and kind of the lies and the half truths that are told about why it exists. But I'd love for Jamil to give any more thoughts about that. What do you think?
I think each of you did a great job of explaining why the work is important. Just a few things I would add was one, the process of having the money put on your head when you find yourself in the clutches of the criminal legal system is illegal, right? You're brought off the street, you're charged, and they take you to what is known in Davidson County as night court, right? And like Raheem mentioned, a magistrate is not an elected official. This is just a person with a law degree, right? This person conducts a hearing, but it's not viewed as a hearing. This is an official hearing, which makes the process illegal because you don't have the representation of an attorney yourself. What they have on you is the charges that you've been accused of, and the magistrate has, if you have one, a copy of your rap sheet. And they come up with this number arbitrarily to justify holding you, well, to keep you held. Because most of the people, like we all seem to recognize on this call, are people who are struggling with just any number of different social issues and conditions that make it difficult for them to fork up the money and get out. Right. So that's one thing I just want to make clear, is that you don't have, they ask you if you want to have an indigent defense attorney or a court appointed attorney appointed to you, and then they have your rap sheet, right? So you fill out this form that says you want an attorney. They give you that, and then they hold you, right? And that's something that I just wanted to contextualize. Another thing is that, in my role with the bail fund as participant coordinator, when we make bails for people and free them, it's my job to follow up with them and their families. So I learned all the intimate details that are going on with families. And like Jessica pointed out, like Raheem pointed out, it really is a ransom. This past month, we launched a campaign to free more people for the holidays so that people could get home. And we had at least a handful of cases where the family members who put in a referral for assistance from us to free their family member just flat out told us we're in a position where we have to make a decision whether or not we're going to pay for Christmas gifts for the children or free our family member, right? So we lifted or temporarily suspended the limit that we try to adhere to, and spent quite a bit more money, but we were successful in freeing people for the holidays, which is priceless. So just those two things, I'll just leave it there for now. I think it's really important, like Raheem said, to see the humanity in people. As a formerly caged person myself, who served over 10 years in prison, a decade of time, 13 years to be exact, it just resonates differently with me when we had these situations, right? When we come into knowledge of like what's really going on, and it's not like most of the general public believe that these are people that we can trust and these are upstanding people and we elect them and they have law degrees and they have all these different privileges. But to be quite frank with you, these people, a lot of them are a lot more heinous in their actions and their deeds than the people that they accusing of low-level offenses like simple possession, trespassing, experiencing homelessness. Like I don't have the exact numbers, but like I said, in my role as participant coordinator for the bail fund, I know for a fact that more than 10-15% of the people that we make bail for are people that are experiencing homelessness.
Thank you for sharing, Jamil. And I think one thing that's going to be interesting for us as we continue this work is really learning about the local organizations and that we're working with, and how each different area kind of faces different unique challenges across the same cause. So it was interesting to hear you talk about the process with the magistrates in Davidson County, and kind of how that's all come to be. Is that a situation that's unique to Nashville, or is that how it kind of works throughout Tennessee or throughout several different states?
Well, in Tennessee, it's very important to know that bail is not a requirement of the law. So in any county, city, municipality, wherever people can be arrested, and it's the constitutional right to be afforded a bail, right? The amount of a bail, or whether or not a price tag is placed on someone's body, is solely the choice of the magistrate. And even if a magistrate decides that a person has a bail of any amount and he or she cannot afford that amount, the next level is the general sessions judge. That general sessions judge can decide to release that individual. And so in Tennessee, bail is not a requirement. It's more, it's a choice given to those who have the authority to impose it.
As a foundation, and certainly in being in communication with a nonprofit, we understand the challenges that the current pandemic has placed in front of us, as we all continue our work to support others. And so, I'm thrilled to hear about the campaign you guys did around the holidays and getting people home to their families. I can only imagine the smiles on faces, when people walk through the door. I'm wondering how we can best support, both WLF Foundation and really whoever's watching this video, how we can best support you and organizations like yours going forward.
I can speak on that. And we really appreciate conversations like this. First of all, I think one of the most powerful things that folks can do to support us and the work we do is to become educated on the work that we do, to learn about the money bail system and educate the people around them. Because there's so much when people understand the way this system works and that it's maybe not the way they thought, or that perhaps they've never thought about it at all. It's like a light clicks on for people and they understand that, there's nothing right about it and the way that it operates. And I think that's really important. And so we love to just have meetings like this where we sit down and talk to people. And so things like educating yourself about the system and sharing that with other people. Beyond that, as the bail fund, we are kind of focused on two things. We focus on what we call our harm reduction tactics, which is paying bail for people. Every time we post bail, we're interrupting a cycle of harm in that person's life. And we will do that for as long as it's needed in our community because it's important to us. But we're also focused on long-term strategies to end wealth-based detention permanently, because that harm reduction only really interrupts the cycle of harm, but we want to end that cycle altogether. And so we have initiatives like a court watch program that we've launched this year, even amidst the pandemic, which has been a challenge, but we now have access to both virtual and in-person court watching. So things like getting involved in that with us is a way that the community can really support us. We're accepting volunteers and we are building out that court watch program to kind of reach some of our goals of ending wealth-based detention. Getting involved in that and just things like signing up for our newsletter so that whenever we have perhaps demands, like we had a recent demand where we called the presiding judge of General Sessions Court in Davidson County to demand virtual access to court hearings for him. Being a part of initiatives like that with us is really important. And then, of course, financial support is always something that we accept and are extremely grateful for. But I think our main goal when it comes to the community is that we want to build a community of people who are educated, who are passionate about these changes we want to see, because we need the help of our community to change it, to pressure the folks in the criminal legal system who have the power to change things, and to get that work done.
Recently started a Community Connect program where we give smartphones or cell phones to individuals who we bail out, who do not own a phone. And why this is important is because in Jamil's position as the participant coordinator, in keeping individuals informed about their court dates, he sends direct text messages. He calls them. So it's very important for us to stay in contact with individuals that we bail out, because if they miss a court date, that changes their status and they become what is called an FTA, failure to appear, and a warrant is placed for that person's arrest. But what we've learned is that just a brief reminder that you have a court date increases that person's chances of going back to court. And why that is important is because the vision of the Nashville Community Bail Fund, which is this overarching thing, is to end wealth-based detention. And the most sure way to at least prove our case, because we're creating a case that we want to present to the Nashvillians that money has nothing to do with why people return to court. And so if we're paying the bail and it's not costing anything, and that person is still going back, this eliminates this myth that money is tied or connected to that person. So what we would like to do is to put a cell phone in the hands of everybody that we bail out. That way we know for a fact that we can communicate with them, because oftentimes we're communicating with their family members, with their children, with their loved ones, but not them, because the sad reality is that 99% of the people that we bail out are houseless or homeless in between, don't have a job. And with that cell phone, not only can they communicate with us, but even bigger than that, they can fill out applications online, they can surf the web, they can stay connected to their lawyers, they can participate in other endeavors that technology is a part of. So Community Connect is definitely a part of it. And I just also would like to say that to date, we've bailed out, we've freed more than 1,400 Nashvillians. We spent millions of dollars on bail, and a large sum of that money, more than $600,000 of that money, $600,000 of that money, we don't even have access to until those cases are closed. So it's imperative that we continue to increase our financial side of things, because if we don't have the money, we don't bail people out. And right now, as long as this system is in place, we have to use money as a power, as a tool. And so we do have some financial goals. We would definitely like to exceed what it costs for us to run the organization for a year. Maybe we could increase that by 2 years. So that's something I just want to plug and say. And as it relates to Court Watch, my perspective on that is this: it invites the community to participate in the jurisprudence process. It allows for the community to see just who the individuals are that we elect to issue out justice in the name of the voters. And what they will see is that it doesn't always look like what we see on TV, on Law and Order, on these various programs that give you an image of what happens in court. Some of the things that happen in court are so frightening. Just to be an individual person, if you didn't make bail, and they bring you in shackles and chains, in an orange jumpsuit, and if your family is allowed to come, which is not the case now because of COVID times, you see this judge, you have an attorney you don't really know, and then you have the DA over here. Basically, the Court Watch program allows you to see this theater play out that's real, because this one person's life is in the hands of these three individuals, and they, you don't even really know what the outcome is. So I think it's important that people see what this looks like. We say eyes on the courts. And in addition to that, the Court Watch program can build people power. We can use our voices, those who come in and say, hey, I want to do justice in a different way. And just to know that they can have access, Court Watch allows for that to occur.
Court Watch has shown me just how misinformed the general public is. We've had volunteers come out of the courtrooms in tears, literally, like completely appalled with what they just witnessed, alarmed and frightened, like asking questions like, is that real? Are they allowed to talk to people like that? So Court Watch not only enables community members to be engaged, but it educates them and amplifies or creates opportunity to amplify the work, right? Because like Jessica was saying, like Raheem was saying, people share this new information, this education that they've retained within their circles, right? So in my view, that is like the ultimate measure of real change being affected, right? When people who have social capital and privilege leverage it to assist in the plights and the lives of those who don't. It's really just that simple, right? It boils down to that. And this is why I was so excited when I got an opportunity to talk to Steve. You don't encounter many white people that just start the conversation by saying, hey, I'm really privileged and I work with this group and they're all really privileged, but we want to do something to, try to move the needle and help people out who are virtually powerless in many regards, right? By systems that were designed to disadvantage people of color. Like when Steve was talking about food insecurities, I didn't mention this in our initial conversation, but I did my capstone project on educational inequality in the St. Louis Public Schools district, right? So what I learned was that these are systems that are very much interlocking. Residential racial segregation contributes to educational inequality, which contributes to income gaps and wealth gaps and minimal opportunities for some who, grow up in communities of concentrated disadvantage. You are pretty much circumscribed by any number of different systems and factors that devalue your life, right? So when I got an opportunity to participate in Core Wash, and I seen like hundreds of people volunteer to show up, even in a pandemic, right? Because we put it out there on social media. Look, these are elected officials who are requiring poor people to show up and put their lives at risk in a pandemic for a trespassing case, for example, or for any. So it made the news. Like the Birch Building in downtown Nashville is under heavy scrutiny for requiring people to show up in a pandemic, put themselves at risk. The hallways are crowded. No one is social distancing. It just showed that these are systems that really don't give a damn, right? So when we get an opportunity to increase awareness and increase the opportunity that people will be better informed and hopefully give a damn, right? We can say that we are moving in the right direction.
One of the ways that anyone can address a problem is getting to the root of it. To understand our work is not to see that somebody has been arrested and then they're facing someone as a bail. You have to understand this is connected to the history of this nation. And at the times when African American people were freed from plantations, everybody was not released. But when they were those who were released or freed, they worked and they bought the freedom of their loved one. The same principle is in place now. And so sometimes the connection, the parallels to really understand why these systems exist, we need to always connect it to the past. That said, our vision is to change the policies that allow for our city to cage human beings for a price. So that means we have to eliminate the money factor. And the way to eliminate the money factor is to be able to prove that money isn't the issue. And so we're in the process now of gathering data that not Nashville Community Bail Fund data. We have our own, but there are two other systems that release individuals in Nashville without pay. That's pretrial release and that's ROR. We want to take that information and we want to compare that information. And we want to take that information once we synthesize that information and educate people around it and ask the question, should we be doing this? The next step is we want to cut the jail population by half. How do you do that? Individuals who are held in jail for various things that have a bail, we need to revisit whether or not they should be there. There are many, many, many individuals in our jails who are there for technical violations because they have a probation sentence. We want to be able to get those individuals out of jail. But most important, our campaign is connected to coalitions now, because what we realize is that we have to change those who sit in the seat of power. And these are the judges, the DAs, and even the chief public defender. Because in 2022, everybody, 11 judges, the DA, and the chief public defender is up for elections. We want to be able to influence that process by presenting facts, by presenting real life narratives, stories of individuals who have been harmed by the bail system. And so ultimately, if we do our work good, which may require us to add people to our team, if we do our job correctly, we will probably elect progressive judges and maybe a progressive prosecutor. And what does that mean? That means that less people are actually being going to jail on bail. Less people are actually being held in jail for periods of time because the sentences will decrease. Nashville is right now is more liberal, democratic than any other city, maybe next to Shelby County in Tennessee. And so if we can put these things together, put all the right people in the places where they need to be, we, the Nashville Community Bail Fund, can be the force within our city that brings about criminal legal reform in ways that has never been done in the history of Nashville, Tennessee. And so that's where we're going.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like the future is absolutely bright. We are here to support every step of the way, and we will certainly keep an eye on what you're doing. And frankly, can't wait to get back to Nashville. So Jessica, Raheem, Jamil, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been my pleasure to listen and learn. And we appreciate all the work you're doing. Thank you so much.